Now let's look at the sensitivity report for the constraints. So it is for the labor hours of assembly and labor hours of uh, testing. So I have a typo here. So now in this case, remember it has similar appearance. So you can find the lower limit and the upper limit. Okay, by copying that, you will find the lower limit. So you have the constraint right hand side of 10,000 and 3,000, and it gives you a lower limit and an upper limit. Okay. So this 10,000, what happens if it changes, if it goes down or up? If it goes down up to 7,200, or upper limit is 10,200. Okay. For 3,000, there is no upper limit. Okay. The lower limit is 2,960. Okay. But what does it say? What is this limits for? Okay. In the case of objective function, the limits were for making sure that the optimum solution continues to be optimal, continues to be fixed at 560 and 1200. Okay. But that's not the case here. The case here is within this range, the shadow price will be valid. So which means we have to find out what shadow price is. But before that, let's see why this is so that it is not about the optimum solution, right? Let's head back to our graphical solution. Okay, so this is the optimum solution, right? Now, when the objective function coefficient changed, that meant that the slope of the objective function line was going to be either more vertical or more flat. Okay. The feasible region itself did not change at all. Okay. Only when the objective function coefficient changes, the slope changes. But what happens when the constraints right hand side changes? If the constraints right hand side changes, okay, so that means, okay, so this constraint, right, if the right hand side increases, it will go up like that. Right hand side decreases, it will go down like this. So when the right hand side value of the constraints change, the feasible region changes. The objective function line remains the same. Okay. This feasible region either expands or contracts. So which means these corner points will change. So the optimum solution by definition is going to change when you change the value of the right hand side. So it's not going to be the same. Even if micron changes by a micron, the optimum solution is off by that amount. Okay. So it is not about the optimum solution. Okay. But what happens is that when this feasible region expands, if it is within the range, now this is going to either, so if it expands, this corner point, the optimum point is going to go up a little bit, or if it contracts, it's going to go down a little bit. So when that happens, the profit is either going to increase or decrease. So that's what the shadow price is about. Okay. The shadow price tells us, okay, now when the assembly labor hours is right now 10,000, right? If it goes up or down, then what will happen to our profit? Okay. The profit will go up or down by $16. So labor hours assembly is 10,000. So if it goes up by 1 hour, then our profit will go up by $16, or in the same units as this. Okay, so it'll go. So if you decrease the right hand side by 1 hour, so instead of 10,000, it is 9,999. So then the profit will go down by $16, and that shadow price validity is in that range. Okay, because if you change the right hand side large enough, so for example, if you keep on increasing, there will come a point when this point will no longer be optimum because this has become redundant. It has gone up back here So then some other point may become optimum. Or if you bring it down, okay, if the resource goes down quite a bit, then it's no longer a intersection of that line and the purple and the green line, but it is the green line and the y-axis is the optimum solution. So a different point becomes optimum, and therefore not only the shadow price is no longer valid. So that's what this is about. One more thing about shadow price is that you will have shadow price only if there is no slack. Because if there is slack, then that means you already have unused labor hours. So if you have unused labor hours, and if you add more labor hours to it, you're not going to increase the profit. So non-binding constraints will have zero shadow price. Okay. So here testing labor hours is not binding, so you have zero shadow price. The labor hours used, okay, so you can see whether it is slack or not from here. So this is the final value, this is the constraint's right hand side. Final value is equal to constraint, so no slack, shadow price is positive. So final value constraint. So what is the slack here? We can find slack from, you don't need the answer report because everything that you need is here in the sensitivity report. Slack is right hand side minus the final value. That's for assembly and for. And similarly, so you don't need to find for net profit, you don't have to go to the answer report or even to the model. You can find it from here. Profit is the final value and the objective function coefficient. So if you do some product of that and that, you'll get the profit. Okay. So what does this mean then? So we understand that this is shadow price. Validity is what is given by this lower and upper limit. So we can say, all right, suppose if you add 100 hours of assembly labor. So what will happen to your optimum solution? Well, we can say that the number of units that we produce will be different because now we have more hours, so we're going to produce more of these products. But we can tell that the profit will go up by, so if 100 hours are added to assembly, okay, what will happen? Okay, so first thing to do is to see whether it is within the allowable increase. So 100 hours is within the allowed increase. So that's the first thing you need to know. Which means what? Shadow price of $16 is valid. Okay. Next is the number of units produced will increase. Okay. But we don't know by how much. That we can't tell. We have to solve the problem. Now, profit will go up by 100 hours times $16, the shadow price. So it'll go up by $1,600. So that's what we can tell. Okay. So what if the labor hours increases? So suppose if you're able to get overtime labor, for example, and there is 300 hours of labor time available to you, how many hours will you deploy? Will you contract all the 300 hours? Well, no, because this shadow price is valid only up to 200. So you'll use 200. So if you have 300, then the shadow price is no longer valid. It's valid up to 200, but after that, it's not valid. And one more thing that you need to be familiar with, the shadow price is also called dual price. So some people call it dual price. Your textbook uses that terminology, dual price. So dual price and shadow price are the same thing.